Hey guys, so this is the video of what we went over in class tonight. First we are starting off with connecting these bottom bars in a different way, and then adding in the cross section in the back, and the difference between like the boolean union and the combine tool. Alright, so go ahead and hold down your right click and get into vertex mode. We're basically going to pull these vertices together. This does take a little bit longer because we have to do each section one at a time, but it is definitely another option. We're going to go ahead and click that first vertices, and then holding down shift to get our little plus, we will click the next one. Let's go ahead and space bar hovering over the perspective viewport to get this one bigger so we can see more of what we're working with. Alright. So hopefully you can see these two guys are highlighted yellow. Those are my selected ones. I am going to hold down shift, hold down my right click, go up to merge vertices, and merge vertices to center. It's going to merge those two. Now if I go ahead and click on this and do move, they now move together. Back there. Okay. So now go on to the bottom one. We're just going to do that again. Click the first one, hold shift to add selection, and click that one. You do not need to lift your finger from the shift. You don't need to repress it again, so I'm just going to keep holding that and do a right click, merge vertices, merge to center. Clicking off that to deselect because it will try to merge all of them together in our next selection. I'm now going to come over to the other side, utilizing my Alt and my left key to rotate around. If you are rotating around a different section, see somehow my pivot is here, I can go ahead and select these vertices by clicking off into space and getting that surround select type object and do an F to focus. And now I am going to pivot around these vertices. And you can do that with any part. Faces, edges, anything like that. Okay, so click off of those if you did that, and so they aren't selected. And let's go ahead and use the G command to repeat command. So, going, actually, it might just focus. So we have to do this again. Click your first one, shift click the one directly across from it, go into merge vertices by continuing to hold that shift, and then click off. Now we can use the G command, because that was our last command. So click the first one, shift click the second one, and then you can just press G, and it will go together. Make sure that you click off of it, as when we go to the other side, to do this side, it will try to merge that one with whichever one you press. Remember that pan is Alt and middle mouse. Go ahead and select these guys again and press an F so we can just pivot around this section. And let's go ahead and do that again. So shift, click the first one, holding down shift, click the second one, pressing G, clicking off, shift, G, and close up our thing there. And now this is one edge. Your edges should be the same, and it will work as if it was one object. And so now you have one single edge instead of two from the bridge. Cool. All right, so next we have the crossbar in the back. I'm going to get into my front view here, and I'm going to go ahead and come up to our poly models and go ahead and drop a cylinder. Using R, I will scale this in. I'll turn this one into wireframe as well. Using that top view, I can just scale the size versus and it doesn't need to be perfect. and then holding down J and our E key to rotate. I'm now going to rotate this to the angle that they're at. Move it up with W, R to scale, and mine's already in component or object, but if you're in world, this won't work. Just make sure that you are holding down, if yours looks like this, hold down your R, hold down your left click, and either go into component or world, or object or component, sorry about that. And then I am just grabbing the one that is along that way, and I'm not going to worry about it going into these. I'm also going to turn this one to wireframe, because we're going to have to move this over. Alright, so from here I'm going to do a Control D to duplicate, E to rotate again, holding J to snap. I'm going to snap into that other side, and it looks like I need to come up a little bit. There. So now we have those two, but currently they are sitting in the middle of our table and we need them to connect to one side or the other. So I'm going to select both of those and just move them. I was looking, I want these to be in Z. It doesn't really matter. I don't have mine being in Z, and just place them where I have the dots. And cool, alright. Actually, let's bring them this way so we can see in our front panel. You could turn this around to back, going to panels, orthographic, and going to back. But we'll just bring it to the other side. That's fine. Alright, so we need to make these curves out of these bars. And if we remember from the top, we did a bevel, and we're going to do that again. So we need to figure out how to combine these to get that bevel. Right? Because right now we can't select any sort of edge that are going on both. They are two separate objects. So we could click them both and go up into our mesh and combined, and now they are one object. But there isn't any line that we can click. If I go into edge mode, all these edges are still acting as if they were the two objects, right? So I can't, there's no edge created here. We will notice what is good about the combined option is that these objects aren't clipped. So maybe in a sketch phase, this is where you would use it until you perfectly know that this is where you want the placement of these bars. But it's not really working for us to create our full model, as we already know that this is how we want our bars from our sketch. So let's go ahead and right click, go back into object mode, if you followed along, and I'm going to now separate these. So we can go back up to mesh and separate. We'll get in more how to separate an object from here to here. But if these were already separate objects and you combine them, now you can just click separate and they will separate, and now they are two separate objects again. So it still doesn't solve our problem of creating those curved edges on our bar. So we're going to learn the new tool of boolean. So go ahead up into mesh. First one here says boolean. You notice there's a little pop out. We're going to learn more about the difference in intersection later, but let's go ahead and hit the union. Now again, this has become one object, but we can see that it has drawn edges where they are connecting. And this is definitely what we want. We want these edges to be connected because now we can bevel those and create that nice slope. Alright, so let's go ahead and right click to go into our edge mode, and let's select those. You notice it's only selecting one side. For this instance, it is okay, but we're noticing here that it's having a bit of issues. So let's first bevel the top. So I'm just double clicking on each of these sides to get all the way around. If it does not do that, click the first one, double click the second one in the row, and it should select holding your shift. So clicking the first one, shift, double clicking the second one. Now I want to come back up into where my poly models are, go all the way to the cube that has little cut off edges, and do a bevel. Turning back on my little display here, now I can see how far my bevel is and to what degree. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because there's this issue here, it's not going to allow me to do any further, but we're just going to leave it as it is. And then I'll turn this back off. And there we have a curved edge. Okay, so now we can more see these issues here. There's lots of little edges coming down. I suspect that we have multiple vertices in this area, and we can combine those, so that's going to get rid of these edges. So let's go ahead and right click and go into vertice mode, and yep, we can see that there's multiple vertices around the same area. If I were to pull this, that one's connected. There's extras in here. So I could either pull this over here or whatever, but I'm going to combine them. So just like before, surround select. We are making sure that we are not selecting anything on the opposite side. And if you are, go ahead and come down into your side view, holding down Control to deselect. Just do a surround selection on the other side so you get rid of that. Alright, so I'm holding down Shift, holding down my right click, merging vertices, and merge to center. I'm gonna do that on the other side. And sometimes it's always good to just go around your object and make sure that none are missing. Doing an F to focus so I can clearly pivot around the other side, and just continuing to do that on at least those four. There we go. Okay, now let's see how our bevel works. So now when I double click on the edge, it's going to go all the way around, holding Shift, go all the way around on the other side. Awesome. And I'm going to turn this back on to see my bevel degree. And coming up to our poly models, going to click on bevel. Hit that fraction so it bumps out to where we are. And then adding in the segments. So it creates that curve. And again, it doesn't need to be like my drawing. Exactly. Awesome. So now we have this bar. It's all connected there. And now you can surround select your object and do a mesh combined. But first we are going to do something that might not make sense currently as we don't see anything change, but as we get more into modeling, this is very important. Go ahead and click your newly formed bar. We're going to edit, delete by type, history, modify, and freeze transformations. I want you to go into your attribute editor and we'll see exactly what we did. So in our table, go ahead and click on our table and we're the attribute editor. If you look at the top, there is a bunch of different stuff going on. This is all of its remembrance of what we put in here. And when I go to edit, delete by type history, modify and freeze transformations, those all delete. It deleted in the delete by type history, modify freeze transformations are going to keep it in its place, and now this was its origin. Alright, so now we can surround select both of our objects and do a mesh and combined. Okay. So let's go ahead and create a cloth now for the top of our table. Didn't have it in the drawing, but let's go ahead and make one. Maybe I want a little runner that goes across. It's something fun to bring into our project and pretty easy to make. So let's go ahead and go up into our poly models, and this time we're going to click this little square, but it's not a cube. We call this a plane. It's going to drop down in the middle of our space. We're going to click the W key to move it up, and then move it above our table to some length. Don't move it close to your table because this is going to fall and have gravity and this object enact on it. And so when we put it up high, more wrinkles and stuff are apt to happen and looking more natural. So one thing to know about the cloth fabric in the program is that we need lots of divisions. So the cloth can only bend and wrinkle where we have these divisions in it. So go ahead up into your channel box editor with this new plane selected, and we're going to go into its inputs and just input more divisions. Do not put in a lot of divisions as this will bog down the program. If you put in way too many, you may crash it. So I'm just going to maybe put in like 20/20 or 30/30 to hopefully not get any 20/20 mishaps in it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and press R to scale this out now that we have those divisions. Like I said, I'm going to create a runner, and I do not need this in wireframe, so I'm going to go up in shading and smooth shade so I can better see my table. There, maybe something like that. So now this is going to fall onto our table and have gravity and this table enact upon it. Alright, let's see if this is going to let me add more width into it. There we go. This can only bend, like I said, where these lines are, so I'm just, whoa, adding those in. Alright, I think that looks about good. That'll be okay. Okay, so we are going to learn a new menu. Going into effects, up here where it said modeling, it's going to bring up this whole new menu. We have one here called cloth. That's what we are going to be using. So with our cloth selected, our table of runner, and you can create this however you want on your table, I'm going to cloth and create end cloth. Now we see this little nucleus come down here, and this is directing to our origin plane. But if I were to let this fall, so down here in our timeline, if I were to grab this little bar and let this fall, it would go right through space because it has nothing to tell it to collide into. Right? So although Maya recognizes this cloth up here is not recognizing this. Right, so we just fall right through. That's not what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my table. We're going to end cloth and create a passive collider. Okay. And now when I grab my cloth, let's make sure that I can see it. It is now going to fall onto my table. And we are starting to get that cloth-like sensation. So here is what I'm talking about where it can't bend on those edges. So maybe I would have wanted to come in and make more. you would have to Z all the way back out of the cloth function for it to go. Okay. I can go into the attribute editor and also start to add some stuff onto it. For right now, there's a collision strength and wind. So if I wanted to add wind, your cloth might be taken off. We can go ahead and play around with those. We're going to play more with those later when we create a pillow. So now we have our cloth here. If I wanted to, I could rotate my cloth, something like that. I want to move it off. See how this goes. There. I have something like that, and now when I press the play function, created something odd. Maybe you'd want a floor there. But yeah, so you can rotate it around and kind of play like that. Maybe since I know it's going to fall there. And you can stop this at any point. Maybe that looks cool to you. Right? So once as we have our cloth, like that. If your cloth hasn't completely fallen, maybe put up way too high, you can see these numbers down here in the side. You can change these out. So this is only going to 120 frames, as maybe it is falling at the end at 200, so I could bump this out to 200, press enter, and now I can get to that 200th frame. Okay. And then if I were to close out of this and save, this cloth is going to bounce all the way back up to its first position. And that's not what I want. I want this to stay here. So I'm just going to grab this and do a Control D to duplicate. And then I'm going to grab I'm going to go back to the first one here, down in our play bar. And then I'm just going to delete this object, delete the nucleus of both of these because now I do not need them. And now I have my cloth, making sure we're just going to do a edit, delete by type history, modify, freeze transformations. And then we notice that our pivot is way above our cloth. So I'm going to go to a modify and center pivot. And this is theoretically the center of our cloth. But yes, so that is how we do the cloth, and we'll get into that more later. Thanks, guys.